again. But it's the only...
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith, and as we have on every Wednesday for the last couple of months now, we have Malcolm MacDonald and John Gibson. Good evening, lads.
Good evening, Steve. Hi, John.
It's match day. It's match day as well. So I'll be back. We're going to do a 45-minute show. Then I'll be back at 5:15 with a team of lads to take you through tonight's game against Newport County. But we're first going to look back on the weekend's game. And Malcolm, a point's better than nothing, especially when you're playing away from home. But how on earth did Newcastle get a point at Tottenham?
Well, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? It was... I thought it was a very poor, organised team, and they really didn't seem to know quite what to do. In all honesty, thank you very much, Spurs. Really appreciate it, because having gone 1-0 up, the most important thing was to get a second, and they didn't do it. And so it doesn't matter how poor you're playing. You're still in the game at 1-0, and if you just get forward, you never know what's going to happen. And of course, I think we were all very pleasantly surprised by the way that Newcastle managed an equaliser, and I'm sure that we're going to further discuss that, because I've got one or two things.
Well, go on, Mal. Carry on, because
I mean, you want me to carry on? Okay.
Yeah, because listen, the one thing we'll need to discuss is the handball rule, because I'm sorry, it used to be the offside rule that used to confuse everybody, but now they've made one of the simplest things in football the most confusing aspect of the game.
Yes, and I have seen over my years of playing, my years of managing, I've seen so many times defenders just leave their arms high and the ball hits it. It used to be that referees would give a penalty when I was playing.
Yeah.
But then it started to change the other way. And I think that defenders have got sloppy, totally sloppy, that they leave their arms in the air, and if the ball hits it, so what? And the fact that referees are now giving it's going to make defenders seriously think about how they've got to defend, and that they can't just stretch their bodies out and do a starfish. And expect to not give a penalty away should the ball strike their arm, and whether you're looking at it or not, it doesn't matter. The centre half, he knew that the ball had gone over his head and that Andy Carroll was behind him, and that Andy Carroll was going to be heading it straight back. He knew it was going to come, but still he left his arm up there. And I think, well done, the referee. Absolutely well done for giving the penalty. I thought it was a penalty, and the lad took it ever so well. I have to say, the keeper read it right, but still couldn't reach it. But it will now make defenders think twice about what they're doing in the penalty areas with regards to their arms. And I fully understand that to jump, you have to bring your arms up, but once you're there, you can bring them down again. You don't have to leave them up in the air. And when there's a free kick, you build a wall. But a centre half, when a ball goes over his head, he does a starfish, and if it hits him on the arm, then it's a penalty for me. And I've said this all the way along, all through my years in the game, in and out the game, that if it hits people on the arm and the arms are away from the sides, it's a penalty.
Okay, Mal, that's your opinion, and I'm looking forward to hearing John's as well, because neither of you two gents ever hold back. So, John, give us your opinion on, first of all, Newcastle's performance, or lack of performance, you would probably have to say, judging by the amount of shots that we had and the amount of possession we had in that game. And tell us your view on the handball incident, which led to Newcastle getting that penalty.
First and foremost, on the game itself, boys, I mean, Dick Turpin at least had the decency to wear a mask when he went Robin. We didn't bother with that. It was just blatant barefaced cheek. I mean, we were lucky to get nil up to that moment. That's how bad we were. I mean, I think Steve Bruce anticipated what he thought was coming, which is why he went 5 at the back, and that didn't work. It was the 6th bloke at the back that saved us, and that was Caldolo, who was quite sensational. I mean, better than I honestly thought over a full 90 minutes he was capable of being. And I take my hat off to him, because he made 2 world-class saves in the first 3 minutes, 3 by 10 minutes, and 5 in the game. And he reminded me a bit, Malcolm, and you, Steve, will remember as well. Can you remember when Tim Krul was down at Spurs and we got it 1-0, and Tim Krul played them on his own? And it was a little bit like that, Malcolm, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say, I really do agree with you, John, about Darlow. I thought he was absolutely superb, and well done him. It was a terrific performance. I think, and that gave the defenders a lot of confidence, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, he got us the point. It might have been Wilson that struck the penalty, but without his performance, the penalty would have made it 5-1 instead of 5-0. I thought Son going off at half-time helped us, because he was a huge danger up front with Kane. They are very potent at the moment. He went off at half-time with an injury. He had struck the woodwork, I think, a couple of times. And the guy that come on's nowhere near his class. So to take Song out of their forward line and not have Bale available helped us. But I mean, the bottom line for us, in 3 hours of Premier League football, we've had against Brighton and then Spurs, we had 1 shot on target, and that was a penalty in the 96th minute. And the thing that brought about the penalty wasn't a shot on target. That is how bad we are up front, whether we've signed new players or not. We desperately need Maximum and Fraser in against Burnley, I think. As for the centre-half thing, the penalty decision, which Malcolm was on about, I love Mal, because it was the answer of a centre-forward and a Newcastle United fan, that the penalty was totally justified. And I would love to say it was as well, because I'm a Newcastle United fan, if not a centre-forward. But if that was given against us, I would have gone loony. I would have gone absolutely loony. And it's got to the ridiculous situation now where they've got to just clear it up for the sake of everyone, because we're not talking about football anymore. We're talking about VAR last season and VAR interfering on handball this season, and it's gone crackers. I mean, it's a good law if we want 6-5 scorelines, and we love 6-5 scorelines, I guess, and I'm very grateful for it. But my Jove, I hope that with Steve Bruce, it didn't colour over what he'd seen in the other 95 minutes. And I certainly don't think with our fans it coloured over that either, because they were very, very realistic. I mean, there's no way you could look at that match and say we deserved anything but a good hiding, while very, very grateful for that point, because it might be important at the end of the season.
Yeah.
Of course.
It could be. Malcolm, go on, Malcolm.
But John, if referees are absolutely consistent, and if it hits the lower part of the arm in a penalty area, it is a penalty. If they stick to that all the way through and are consistent, I'm all for that.
Well, that's a good point. And I suggest, and I think this might be a very clever point, I think Steve Bruce in training on a Monday to Friday as a means of getting round our goal drought, should get his players to practice heading the ball onto centre-half's arms to give us a better chance of scoring with a penalty. I think that would be a very clever guys in training. Let's have a go at hitting players' arms, and we'll take a penalty.
Right, because I did hear a comment that said that Andy Carroll headed it purposely onto his arm.
Oh well, I mean, I would accept that. He didn't. No, he didn't.
Somebody made that comment.
I tell you what, did you two guys worry? Did you two guys worry when the penalty was given and Andy Carroll grabbed the ball to take the penalty? Steve Bruce overruled him and said that Callum Wilson had to take it. But would you have flapped a little bit if it was Andy putting the ball down in the 96th minute?
On his current form, I would have.
Yes, me too. I have to say that the lad
Joelinton
took it well. He really did take it well. The goalkeeper got very close to it, but he was really at a stretch. So it was
he kept his ball, didn't he?
Yeah. Anyway, it stuck it up those people who like to have a pop at Newcastle in the media. Anyway, Jamie Carragher's had a field day on social media with saying that it shouldn't have happened. It just felt nice to get one over the cartel who voted against Newcastle's takeover. So let's talk about this guy, though. He often gets mentioned on the show. Joelinton. Surely there must be an international. There must be an international call-up on its way now, Malcolm, for Joelinton. Scored 2 last week. Man of the match outfield performance, because Darlow was certainly the best player on the pitch of the weekend. But Joelinton, he's on the up. He looks a different player.
Does he?
I thought it was only us two with glasses on, Steve, not your rose-tinted glasses.
If he looks,
I said I was going to give him 10 games.
You're suggesting you can play.
Yeah, okay, Mal. So I knew I would get some negative comment about Joelinton. I'm trying to stick up for the lad this season. People who watch the show, even before the show's coming on, going, I bet you Malcolm's still not positive about Joelinton after that performance. You're not, are you? Tell us why, Malcolm. Go on, tell us why.
I really don't think that he actually understands how the game is played. Let me go back to last season. I know I've said this before, but this is absolutely crucial as to why he's not succeeding. In the whole of last season, he scored 2 goals. And each time he started from about 30 yards out and sprinted and got into the box and finished up sticking the ball into the net each time. But do you know that they were the only 2 times in the whole season that he actually sprinted into the box? He didn't work out, if I sprint from 30 yards out, I can get on the end of crosses and score goals. He still hasn't worked that one out. He doesn't do it. The twice he did it, he scored and doesn't do it again. Well, and when I see that, then I know that a player, he doesn't understand what that position is demanding, and he doesn't know how the game of football is played. What is the point of a centre forward knocking a ball off 30 yards out and then turning round and watching the game like a spectator? And if the ball is put into the net by somebody, Joelinton is still 30 yards away from goal. That's how he plays. He's not a forward. He's not a midfield player. Certainly not a defender. And maybe he's a goalkeeper. I don't know. But he'd probably be a better goalkeeper than he would a forward.
John, is there any way of convincing you from Joelinton that there's a player in there? I mean, you know, look, I am trying. I did say I was going to give him 10 games this season to try and convince me that he's going to prove himself. You know, we're nearly halfway through that with tonight's game. In fact, we are halfway through that. Look, the 2 goals, we know they were against Morecambe. You know, I was saying it tongue-in-cheek last week, but there were 2 goals. He should have had a hat-trick. One of them was a good finish. I thought on Saturday, in a horrendous game, outfield, I thought he put a shift in. I thought he put more of a shift in than he's ever done that I've seen him. And believe you me, when I've criticised players, and I do it very rarely, I criticised him a lot last year. But this season, I've been willing to try and give him a chance. There was signs of a player there. He was putting effort in. He was putting a challenge in, and the stats backed us up. When you actually looked at the stats, he did have a decent game for Joelinton standards. So, is there any hope? Do you think, John, that we're going to get something out of Joelinton over the course of this season?
Well, we've got to hope. If you spent 40 million, which is double the Newcastle United record, by the way, 20 million was the previous record. So they doubled the record on what they thought was a centre forward. Now, the one thing we know above all else is that he isn't a centre forward. That's the first and foremost thing that we know. Because as Malcolm says, a centre forward, it sounds quite basic, but he's supposed to go in the penalty area, the centre forwards. If we're going to get anything out of him, I think it's going to be in the position that he played in Germany, where he plays on the left side of a front 3. I think that's the best hope. He certainly looks like a player when he runs out the tunnel, doesn't he? I mean, he looks terrific in his strip. Then, unfortunately, somebody throws a ball on the park and everything disintegrates. But, I mean, yes, we've got to have hope. Of course we've got to have hope. But if you're very harsh on the money spent on him, what a waste, because we don't spend big money. But having got him, and we say he's 23, he's young, that is not hugely young, The fella sitting in the middle on these photographs was 21-year-old when he come to Newcastle, never having kicked the ball in the top division, and scored a hat-trick against Liverpool on his home debut. You've either got it or you haven't got it. I'm hopeful that we might be able to rescue a situation with him playing narrow in a front 3 left-hand side. The trouble is with that, we've got Maxman, we've got Ryan Fraser, we've got several people that play out in those positions. We've got Almiron that can play there, and he's got to get in ahead of them. That's tough. I mean, the truth is that, yes, he will continue to score goals when he's playing in the League Cup, because we're playing League 2 sides. And for goodness sake, if a £40 million Premier League striker can't score goals against Morecambe, for example. I mean, Morecambe, bless them, were an embarrassment. A lot of people say, well, there's always the chance of a giant killing. And we've been on the back of giant killing. We know that. But I tell you what giant killers have got. Giant killers have got huge camaraderie within their team and a huge will to get a result. Morecambe are so decimated with the lack of wages last season, the smallest budget in the League 2, etc., that they are just there for the taking. They lost the last game a few days before us, 5-0 at home against somebody of their own class, a League 2 side. And then we beat them 7. And yes, they went on and won at Southend on Saturday, but they're another club in a similar position to Morecambe, on the bones of their uppers, desperately just trying to survive and not do a Macclesfield. It was a job well done by Newcastle at Morecambe. Don't get me wrong, but it was a job easily done. It was right opposition, and it had no bearing on us going to Spurs, as today's result will have no bearing on the Burnley match, because it'll be a totally different team, and it'll get a result, get us through, but it doesn't have a bearing on what happens in the Premier League.
Raymodo, thanks for becoming a member today. Sean's asking us, Malcolm, Bruce said he totally understands we haven't played well in the last 2 games. This was at his press conference yesterday, but doesn't think it's down to our style of play. Malcolm, in your opinion, what is our style of play?
I don't know. We'll have to ask Steve Bruce, won't we, on that one? I really don't know, because he starts with a 4 at the back, and then it's a 5, and then switches to a 4, and so there is no real style to what's being done at all. You know, that are they trying to find a place for Joelinton, or are we going to stick with the 2 lads up front that have been playing in the league side so far? We've lost Richie, and I'm really sorry about that. It's been a nasty injury that he's had, and he's had to have surgery, and I think he will be a miss, because by heavens, he really does put in a shift every 90 minutes of every game. But you say, okay, well, we've lost Richie. Well, can Joelinton do that kind of job? No, he can't. No, he just hasn't got it within him. And so what I don't want us to become is a side trying to find a position for their most expensive player.
Yeah.
Because that's the wrong focus entirely. The focus has got to be on winning games, stacking up the points. And if you're trying to find a place for a poor player in your side because he was very expensive, it's going to drag everybody down. And I really am concerned that happens, and it will make a very bad season for us all.
What is our style of play, John Gibson?
Great question, that, my friend, because we go from a flat back 4 to a 5 halfway through the Brighton game, and it still makes no difference. Then we go for a 5 down there, but for our goalkeeper, who would have been massacred. The thing that bothers me is that we say, if it is not our style of play that is to blame for the shoddy performances, which is what Steve is suggesting, what is it? Is it because we bought badly then? Is it either on ability or on attitude of the players? Because what else can it be? Because there is absolutely no question that the last 2 Premier League matches, after playing a shocking West Ham side on the opening day, when we didn't pepper their goal incidentally, I think we had 2 shots on target and scored with both shots. Our style of play is nowhere near good enough to satisfy a 50,000 crowd when those guys are able to go in the ground. And when they're not, they're still there watching it on telly, so they haven't gone away. They're there and they can see with their own eyes what we are faced with. And our style of play is putrid. I mean, we don't like it. Can you imagine what neutrals will do with it? Can you imagine what neutrals will do looking at Newcastle v Burnley on Saturday and say, oh, I must rush home quick on Saturday night and not go out because I want to see Newcastle play Burnley on the box, and you live in Birmingham and you look up that the last 2 games between them last season were both noughts, and you look at how we've started this season. No, we're nowhere near entertaining enough and nowhere near good enough for results, because we got slaughtered at home by Brighton, who are a decent side but not a great side, and we couldn't get a shot on target at Spurs, who are decent but not great. So, you know, it isn't good, Steve.
Yeah, it's not. Alan Thompson's asking a question, Malcolm. If Wilson gets 10 goals, he'll be our player of the season, but he's so isolated from the midfield. Will you have any sympathy for Joelinton when he was doing the same role last season? I mean, it's, you know, I don't want to, you know, it always becomes like a Joelinton show, but it's no surprise because, you know, you wore the number 9 with such, you know, with such plum and style and scored a lot of goals. You're always going to be asked your opinion about him. So, you know, you've got to be honest, Malcolm. And, you know, Wilson's a much better player than Joelinton, isn't he? It's as simple as that.
Yes, he is. And he makes himself available. And for midfield to knock it into his feet, and he will hold it up, and that allows the midfield to get forward. What I saw time and time again, once the players realised what Joelinton was up ahead of them, what I saw time and again was a midfield player would lift his head, see it was Joelinton, and turn away, because he didn't want to give it to him, because it was going to get lost. And so they sought to play it square and play it backwards, because they didn't want to play it forward, because he would lose the ball and the opposition would be on the attack again. And in the end, what happens is that when you sort of you don't make that first pass that you see, that you turn away, it's taking extra time to do. And in the Premiership, it's that quick, boom, you're getting caught all the time. And so midfield players were really starting to feel the pressure of not wanting to pass to Joelinton, because it wouldn't stick up there. He lost the ball, and all of a sudden, Newcastle were having to defend every time of his bad touch, and that's why he was sort of left up there on his own, and wasn't even taking part in the game, because his control.
I mean, I do agree that Wilson, looking at Callum Wilson, who's today's number 9, he needs more support to get the best out of him. We know he can score goals. We know that he can play off the last defender and cause an awful lot of trouble. But any centre forward, and Malcolm always said this when he had Hibby and various people at Newcastle, have got to have somebody to fashion the bullets for him to be able to fire. And and at the moment, Wilson hasn't got that. That's why I'm rather anxious that against Burnley, we can get Fraser on one side and St. Maximum on the other side to at least provide some service from out wide to get the ball in quickly. Wilson needs the ball played quickly and early, not tip, tap on the edge of the box, and eventually he needs it played early and give him a chance. Those wide players will increase his chance, but there's no question at all that Newcastle do lack, in my opinion, real creativity in the centre midfield. We might have a few people that can play there, whether we talk of Hayden or Shelby or the two Longstaffs or Hendrick moving in there. We've got players that can play there, but we haven't a real guy that unlocks defence there, apart from people would say Shelby. And I'm beginning to think John Joe is going backwards rather than forwards these days. We know that he's got this pass in his locker, but all we do now is wait an hour and a half to see if he can produce that pass once, We don't see him dominating games, getting hold of that midfield and spraying the ball about. We could do with a Terry Hibbert. We could do with a Tony Green, a Gaza, people in midfield that'll make things happen. We haven't got that. Wilson suffers, so we might have to get him out wide with people like Maximum and Fraser. The other hope is just that the support of Miggy Almiron running can open things up for him. But he needs some help. I think the difference with him and Joelinton is that we believe that if Wilson gets help, he's capable of doing the job. If Joelinton gets help, in terms of goals, we believe he isn't capable of doing that job.
Sure. And John, I really do agree with what you're saying. And just on the point of John Joe Shelby, that when he's spraying those balls, the problem with him is that he's not spraying them from midfield or slightly forward of that. He drops back into the back four and then he starts hitting 60-yard balls. That's not what we want. What we would like to see him is 30 yards further forward, knocking 30-yard balls. And he is then in contact. If he's playing 20 and 30-yard balls, into the guys ahead of him, then he can get there and support. But when he's knocking 60-yard balls, he's knocking it, and there's no support to whoever it is that he's knocking it at. So Newcastle, they're just not getting out enough because the midfield are sitting back. The midfield has got to push and go and support the forwards. And when that happens, the back four can then push up and they can find their natural position when Newcastle have got the ball, which is pushing up to the halfway line. John Joe Shelby will stop that if he keeps dropping off. He's got all the ability in the world as John Joe, but I want to see him punish opposing sides, and you do that by getting forward at them.
Yeah, no, I would agree, lads. It's always interesting to hear, your opinions. I think the midfield thing is obviously getting to people's, getting to people now. Hendrick was brought in, ASM, we know his best position. But yeah, I mean, it's going to run that. It's going to be interesting to see, how things pan out over the next couple of weeks. Of course, some players just finding their feet. Let's get the team up for tonight's game so that we can have a look. Of course, Newcastle taking on Newport County in the Carabao Cup for a place in the quarterfinals. And Gillespie is in goal. Manquillo, Kraft, Fernandez, who captains the team tonight, and Lewis, Shelby, Sean Longstaff, Murphy, Almiron, Fraser, and Carroll. So quite a strong team there, Malcolm, tonight for a Carabao Cup game and a place in the quarterfinals. Steve Bruce taking this very seriously.
Yeah, that is a strong side. Yeah. Oh, well done, Steve Bruce, on that. Yeah, I'm going to look forward to this. It looks a reasonable back line. There's plenty of legs in midfield, and it'd be nice to see Murphy turn it on a little, as he did in the last round. And then up front, Carroll, he's got the pace certainly of Almiron. As long as Almiron is looking to support Andy Carroll, yeah, this could be rather interesting. And I have to make the point that Newport County, they've had a tremendous start to this season. They've lost just the once, the second game of the season. I think it was in one of the minor league cup competitions, but for the rest of it, they've been getting some super results against good sides at that level, and so that they're going to give it all they can tonight. That's for sure, because they want to be in the next round, and I hope that Newcastle are wanting to be in the next round more than Newport County are.
John, what's your take on that lineup?
That lineup is strong enough for the job in hand tonight against Newport County. I don't doubt that at all. What I'm going to find intriguing is when we play in the quarterfinals, because I believe we will win tonight. When we play in the quarterfinals, and there's a lovely break now into December before we play in the quarterfinals. But if you look at who's going to be left, there's going to be a lot of good Premier League side left. It depends on what teams they put out. But it'll be interesting to see what sort of side Steve Bruce puts out in the quarterfinal if we're playing another Premier League side. Because while that side's strong, it's still not really his Premier League side, is it? It's not the side that will play against Burnley or has played in the other two Premier League games. So it'll be interesting to see what side he picks there. But I certainly think that side's good for the job that's got to be done tonight. Because when we talk about Newport County, and Malcolm's absolutely right, their record this season is first rate. But they're a League Two club, for goodness sake. Not a League One club, which is what we played against in the FA Cup last season. A League Two club. And, whatever they do at their level, Newcastle, if each one of those players aspires to be a Premier League player should be well capable of taking Newport County apart tonight, because if they can't, let them go and play for Newport for the rest of the season, because they're not good enough to play for us. That's for certain. And I would expect Newcastle to win tonight. It's not going to be anywhere like as easy as it was against Morecambe, because I was talking about what is wrong with Morecambe. They're a dispirited, disillusioned club because of what they're facing, poor lads. So this is going to be different. And having got 7 against Morecambe, I don't think we're going to get 13-0 against Newport, which is, of course, is Newcastle's record score. Malcolm, is 13-0 against Newport. That's a good record. When Len Shack, who used to be my roommate when we went away on the first cup trips, I roomed with Shack. He scored 6 on his debut and won 13-0. Ironically, people remember the 13-0, but ironically, when it was in the league too, we're in the same division. Ironically, when we went to Newport later in the season, we actually lost. Having beaten them 13-0 here, we actually lost at Newport. But I don't think it's going to be those sort of scores tonight, but I fully expect Newcastle to win. Yes, Newport's got a good record. They beat Watford in the last round. But remember, Watford were relegated from the Premier League, then the Championship, and they put out mainly a reserve side against them. And they have beaten, in recent times, Leicester and Leeds in the FA Cup. But which is why, of course, Sky have taken the match tonight, because they're hoping for the famous giant killing. I don't think that will happen. But when it doesn't happen, it won't have me walking on air into the Burnley match on Saturday thinking we're going to massacre these guys and send them back to Lancashire. Different ball game, Premier League.
John, a lot of people asking about transfers, talk about Phil Jones, Newcastle not going for that. Ross Barkley, of course, going to Aston Villa today on loan. They've had a good window. A lot of people asking if you've got any idea as to whether Steve Bruce intends to bring anybody else in, whether he's going to be allowed to bring anybody else in, loan deals, permanent deals. Any news, John?
Yeah, I mean, he's desperate to bring more players in. Another 2, essentially. Of course, he would like more than that, but he would like a centre-half and he would like a centre-forward, and we would love him to get those. It will probably have to be on loan. I'm not including the young boys, you know, the South American guy that's coming over here for 120,000 and the centre-half who's on trial because he's left Schalke. They are kids, and they're not coming to make an impact on the first team right now. They're coming to be the future of Newcastle United, to do something next season, etc., but not to rescue the current season. So I wouldn't include them in what we're talking about. I'm disappointed to see some of the big names that are going out on loan. Barkley, yes, we've said that he would like really a centre half and a centre forward, but we certainly could do with a midfielder as well. He might have been decent. I don't think they're going to go for Jones at all. Smalling was a name that was mentioned. We need a centre half. There's absolutely no question about that, because in the current situation, if you notice, on Saturday, at Spurs, when he wanted to play 5 at the back, he had to drop Hayden into centre half because he didn't have another centre half. Tonight, when he's wanting to rest a couple like Lascelles, etc., he's having to play Kraft for right back at centre half, which he's played before. But that's how short we are at centre half, never having got Rob Holding from Arsenal. We are short when you've got to play Hayden and you've got to play Kraft in there. So we need a centre half. And by Jove, don't we know that we need another forward? Because if Callum Wilson gets injured, what then?
Sure. And just on the point that you make, John, I hope Kraft is a better centre half than he is a right back.
I knew you were going to say that, big man. I knew you were going. I set you up for that one.
Didn't you, John?
You smashed it home.
Obviously, it's it'd be great to get into the quarterfinals. It's going to give us a big buzz. You would imagine. Certainly, the supporters will have something to look forward to later on in the year, Malcolm. And winning breeds success. So it doesn't matter who it's against, as long as you can get a win tonight, and it takes you and sets you nicely up for the Burnley game at the weekend, Mal.
Absolutely. it's always good to keep a clean sheet no matter who you're playing against. It's always good to go and knock a few goals in as well. And hopefully that the side really go at it today. The one thing that I know, and I think that we can all take it for granted, that Newport County are going to run their socks off tonight. Mm-hmm. And so Newcastle, they've got to deal with this absolute constant burst of energy and speed from Newport County, and they've got to deny them the ball and get playing, and make the pitch as big as possible by the positioning of wide players, to give everybody that bit of space to go and play in, and get plenty of balls into the box. It just wasn't happening against Spurs, and it certainly wasn't happening against Brighton either. And yet, just before that, we've beaten Morecambe by that huge scoreline. So yeah, let's practice getting the ball into the box, for heaven's sake. There's no use having people like Andy Carroll in the side if you're not going to properly use him, and that is get some really good crosses coming to the far post, and let Andy Carroll get on the end of it, and people going for the knockdown. Want to see bodies getting into the box. When there were times at Spurs when there was a couple of white shirts in the box and the goalkeeper, and that was it. You didn't see anybody at all getting into the Spurs box to try and cause a little bit of danger. I want to see the reverse tonight.
Yeah. Okay. Prediction for tonight, Malcolm?
I want Newcastle to keep a clean sheet and go and score 4 or 5.
Okay. Gibbo?
Yeah, I think, for a start, I don't think tonight's result will only reflect on the game against Burnley if we got knocked out because of the doom and gloom that would cause. Yeah. But because the team is very much a different team to what he'll field against Burnley, it'll not have any impact. 7-0 against Morecambe had absolutely no impact on the Spurs game where we could have lost 7-0. So I don't think it'll do that. But I do think that it is a great opportunity to put us in the quarterfinals. It mustn't be messed up. I must say that I think Almiron and Fraser could run Newport absolutely ragged. And that is what I would hope for. Those two, who are very quick and very forward-thinking, can really get amongst them. And Andy Carroll will be battering them all over the penalty area. Of course he will be. So I would look for Newcastle to win, and win comfortably. Not as comfortably as Malcolm was forecasting there, but I would take a 3-0 to Newcastle.
Great stuff, lads. Sorry to you watching who may be expecting a slightly longer show. I've got to go off and make the Ben's tea. I will be back at 5:15. Match day live against Newport County. Me and a few of the guys from around the world, Newcastle United fans from around the world, will be taking you through the game. And these 5:30 kickoffs midweek are no good when you've got kids, lads.
There was a lot of honesty in there about going to make the teas. I hope that doesn't happen down at 5:30 in Newport. I hope that we look after business on the pitch, boys.
Not as much honesty, really. Like Wallace made it, John, and I'm just heating it up, but it's still making it.
in my book, it is, yes.
Great stuff, lads. Look forward to speaking to you next week.
Wish them bon appetit.
I will do. Take care, lads. Bye-bye.
Cheers, boys.